I've just come off of 𝗙𝗀𝗋𝗃 testing the latest Helldivers update, and it's f***ed. Now, you don't often get an intro like this from me, but that's the best description I could actually come up with right now. The game is f***ed. We've gone from Into the Unjust with its cool new enemies and biomes to now creating even more severe issues, taking the game in the exact opposite direction it needed to go, which we're going to get into in just a moment because I've tested it all out and some of this looks to be completely untested and it is thoroughly game-breaking. If you're new here, please consider hitting subscribe and ringing the notifications bell so you can receive my future upload alerts. And now, let's get into what just happened to Helldivers. Okay, as always, I'll include a link to today's patch notes down in the video description so you can review and reference them when you want to. But for me on PC, patch 1.400.002 was only about 83 or 84 megs in size, I forget which. So in terms of size and scope, it's very small and you should be able to download it fairly quickly and install it without issues. Within today's patch are 12 various crash and bug fixes, and if you were experiencing things like crashing on game startup, hopefully those are now fixed for you. But what we really need to take a look at are the big ones. Starting off with where it says, quote, fixed an issue where Helldivers were reinforcing on top of cave structures. And to be fair, the devs did indeed make it so you cannot land on top of the caves when coming down from your super destroyer while breaking or disabling everything else. Here, take a look at this as we dropped in to test it out on the nuke missions, and the first thing you notice is that the HellPod steering has basically been fully disabled. You have maybe a few feet of movement allowed, but that's it, which makes hitting some of the bigger chargers and bile spewers who are located on the drop zone damn near impossible. No biggie, right? We'll just sprint around for a few, kiting the bigger stuff, maybe kill the chargers and close the bug holes while calling in our support weapons and resupplies until you find out that none of that can now be called in. So while the developers were making it near impossible for us to land on the cave roofs, they've also made it impossible to call in anything. No resupplies. I tried to call in a stalwart, backpacks, turrets. None of that can be called in. You can try to, but the strat balls will hit the ground even right in the middle before you ever call in the nuke drill itself. They'll roll around for a few seconds and then disappear. The only thing you can call in are items that are deployed by the shuttle, i.e. mechs. Now, those seem to have some insane pilots who will bring the shuttle inside the cave structures themselves and drop the mechs off pretty much on top of you and your squad's heads, but at least they're inside the cave and ready to use to defend the nuke drill. But here's where it goes from, okay, we can compensate for this, to just effing crazy. First is that there are now no enemy spawns around the nuke while it is drilling. Now, maybe this was the tile set we were testing it out on. I honestly don't know, but I do know I've done this mission a million times, and you're normally swarmed with bugs coming in from all sides, and as of this morning, I saw nothing. I stood there in my mech waiting for the drill to go through its sequence before I could light it off for detonation, and I maybe fired 1-2 rounds. Then we found out that the key items you need when taking on the drill sites, that being the ability to reinforce your squad mates, is now also clearly broken and busted. You can't do it, which is mind-boggling. So now, not only can you not call in anything like resupplies, strat weapons, even a turret through the roof opening while having clear line of sight to the sky, but you can't even call in a dead squad mate. Watch here and now as we attempted to test this thing out, because we had already seen that you couldn't call in a single squad mate if they needed to be reinforced. So then we decided to squad wipe to see what the game would do. And there you go. Yeah, the devs did fix the issue with us Helldivers and the nuke drill itself landing on the cave roofs, by taking away the ability to call in everything from support weapons to squad mates, with the consequence that if you and your squad wipe, that's it. GG's. The game just sits there in a loop and you have to abandon with your squad back to the ship. Now, the one change the community was really concerned about was the upcoming adjustments Arrowhead was going to make to the Rupture strain enemies, specifically those pesky warriors. And for those of you that were not in the know about this major issue within the game, if you were hosting the party and taking on the Rupture strain, which are those burrowing bugs that of course go underground and sneak attack you from there, including the warriors, bile spewers, and chargers. Anyways, the warriors in particular were broken and busted. At least they were if you were hosting, because those things would spring from the ground, dealing hella damage, and they were not able to be dodged or countered. They essentially were lightning quick and had aimbot, so even if you dodged or dove perpendicular just before they breached the ground, they were still going to enact the stem tax on you, making you pop a stem each and every time, or they would just outright kill you. Well, after today's patch, it took what should have been a new and interesting bug variant, one that burrows underground, again from new, interesting, and somewhat difficult, over to absolutely an effing nuisance, and for many, a deal breaker. I've seen post after post outright saying F these things because of how broken they seem to be and how much of the challenge they took away from the higher difficulties, making dives thoroughly disappointing. Well, instead of the devs fixing the warriors so the host wasn't an auto-locked snack, they've instead transferred that auto-lock now onto all members of the party. Yeah, so now everyone gets the disappointment of dealing with these things with no situational counters. Now, yes, I know that you can bring in explosive weapons, things with high stagger force, you can use grenades, arc, gas, basically anything that does AoE, and you can then pepper the ground as you see these things burrowing towards you to force them up so you can then kill them. But when you're dealing with the volume of bugs you see on level 10s, you quickly run out of explosives. You have to fit in a reload or you just need supplies. And even then, these damn things just keep burrowing, popping up, and doing hella damage to you even when you attempt to evade them. In fact, the Rupture Warriors aimbot has been so juiced up that they can now pounce from the ground up to a Helldiver attempting to make a backpack-assisted escape. I mean, what the hell are you supposed to do now? This specific bug is the reason I 100% of the time now wear heavy armor, which I don't prefer. But if you miss one of these things while you're attempting to deal with a Hive Lord, have 2 dragons overhead, and are dealing with a massive breach, it's lights out unless you're wearing something like heavy armor and vitality or some combo of armor and boosters. And at least for me and my squad of regulars, we were all commenting that the cave audio didn't sound all that much better. I mean, it wasn't spiking, at least during our sessions, but it sounded like it was still kind of underwater or insanely muffled while we were firing at targets inside the caves. Even testing the call-ins and wide open areas like extraction while inside the caves was really hit or miss with those call-ins. Trying to reinforce right next to the center of extraction would be a 50-50 if the strat ball would actually stay in the game or just go poof and disappear into the Neververse. And when you are able to get a call in to key up and come down, it lands nowhere close to where you last called it, leading to divers getting smushed with no warning. So there it all kind of is, and the question remains, where does this now leave Helldivers 2? Well, here's my thoughts on it all. First off, QA should have caught that inability to reinforce while in the caves now missing. To me, that's crazy that thing made it through at all. I also forgot to mention this, but for science, we actually tried reinforcing in normal spots, and when my squad mate called me in while he was outside the caves and with clear line of sight, the game still pushed me back to the same nuke hive site we had just cleared, which was miles away from his location. And with those few feet of steering it allowed, I was able to get my pod to land on the very lip of that chasm left by the nuke. A few inches more, and I would have been caught in a never-ending death loop of being reinforced down that bottomless pit. The other, and quite possibly much more mind-blowing change, is the one they made to the Rupture Warriors. It was clearly broken for the host prior to today, and instead of addressing that issue, the devs instead decided that everyone should share in the pain. Like, what the f is going on here? There's a way to do difficulty right with overwhelming enemy forces and so on, but using this bullshit to create artificial difficulty is just poor and lazy design. If you can't effectively counter it, and the damn things have auto lock on, now able to pounce after evading jetpack divers, what's the point in having them in the game in the first place? Now, I'm glad that dragons can now be damaged by fire and gas. I'm happy for Xbox divers finally getting to see the game in its natural color palette instead of the muted mess it was at launch. And I'm also glad that rare and specific crashes have been addressed. More stability is never a bad thing, but when you as a dev team have f***ed the game harder than what it was before the changes were made, well, in that case, your work and best intentions have outright failed. But yeah, there it is, divers. I'm usually pretty positive on Helldivers, and I try to offer feedback and suggestions, but the bulk of this update, specifically the in-game, in-combat action items, were not properly tested. They're half-baked, and if left in the game like this, will kill off the positive momentum we Helldivers have been experiencing. Remember to hit subscribe and to ring the notifications bell to stay up to date on all things Helldivers. Thanks so much to all of our current channel members. And until the next one, this is 𝐷𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿